Well, despite a disappointing season, the first losing season since 1998, Brent Venables on all other fronts is accomplishing big things, recruiting and in the transfer portal with a tremendous class coming in on National Signing Day, and then supplementing that with experienced players in the transfer portal. So there's two, Jason, that you mentioned to me before we started our record here, and one, this Rondell Bothroyd. He's a defensive lineman that's got a ton of experience at Wake Forest. My goodness, he has played 42 games at Wake Forest in his career, and he's been a productive defensive lineman. Had his best season 2 years ago with 16 and a half tackles for loss and 7 sacks, had 6 more sacks this season. So he's one player that is in the mix in regards to Oklahoma's pursuits.
Yeah, Oklahoma really likes him, and I think when he hit the portal, there was some immediate follow up and some immediate discussions between the Oklahoma defensive staff and Bothroyd. So he would be a guy that would be just an absolute need, I think, for Oklahoma coming into this 2023 season. I think what they're doing, Mark, is Oklahoma and Venable specifically understands the need that Oklahoma has along the defensive line. I think for no other reason, it is due to the fact that Oklahoma's going to go to the SEC within a year or two, and then they need to have they need to be bigger, they need to be better, they need to be a little bit more athletic on the defensive line, and the production really just wasn't there, particularly when you look at some of the defensive ends. So I think defensive end is going to continue, whether it continues to be with Bothroyd, whether it continues to be with a couple of other guys that could, if they potentially hit the portal or if there's interest, wherever that staff sees fit. I think they're going to continue to go very heavily off that. We've seen Trace Ford from Oklahoma State come over to Oklahoma. From a defensive lineman perspective, they've got another one in Jacob Lacey that came over from Notre Dame as well. So they're going to continue to be very active on the defensive side of the ball, particularly on the defensive line and at the linebacker position. I think they feel good where they're at with who could potentially be returning in the secondary, plus the guys that they got in that in this I almost said this draft class, in this recruiting class here in 2023. Very, very heavy on the secondary side. So you got Jacoby Johnson coming in, you've got Peyton Bowen, you've got Josiah Wagner, you've got Makari Vickers. So they've got a lot of guys that are coming in there to be able to kind of to bolster some of that depth and within the secondary. So I think defensive line and linebacker and then wide receiver are going to be areas that you see this team pursue over the coming weeks and months.
My apologies on the pronunciation of Rondell Bothroyd's name. I thought it was Randall. I've checked it out. We've got Rondell Bothroyd with an O. So there it is right there. And again, a lot of production. Do we know? I know that you had reached out to some sources concerning Bothroyd. Do we know what type of player he is? If he's a big body run stuffer? I just see defensive line status, so I didn't know if he played the end position or he was an interior guy.
Yeah, no, he's a defensive end. Yeah, he's an end guy for Wake Forest, and as you've mentioned, has 16 and a half sacks through his career. I think he has somewhere around 14 over the last couple of years. So I think he's been a little bit obviously more productive as career has gone on. But he's a guy that Oklahoma really, they underachieved a bit from the defensive end perspective, right? I think you had Ethan Downs and you had Reggie Grimes and Marcus Stripling to a certain degree that were really expected to have monster years for Oklahoma. And it really just kind of didn't really materialize. Reggie Grimes started off really, really well, 4 sacks, I think, over his first couple of games, and really just wasn't able to continue that consistency. And kind of the same thing with Ethan Downs. So they understand. I think Oklahoma understands what they need from a better pass rushers from the end. So if you're in a position where you've got a kid like Bothroyd, and I think Oklahoma fans are already, but they're gonna continue to be just kind of enamored with PJ Adebawore, who he has the body to be able to play immediately right now, and he's going to come in the spring. So he's a guy that's absolutely going to factor in. Had a sack in the Under Armour All American game yesterday. It just continues to get rave reviews. Just wherever he goes. So I think he's a guy that will factor in. But I think they're still going to look at some other guys that have a little bit more experience, like potentially a Bothroyd, like they got with Trace Ford that came over from Oklahoma State. So I think, like I said, that's going to be an area that probably mark that they spend a little bit more time on the ends versus kind of some of the tackles.